The book really is about connecting to the other people in the organization that are important and getting the right people in the right seats attitudinally.
It's so interesting you got there right away. So many people will reach out and they'll spend so much time talking about the dad, and the dad is absolutely critically important. But really, the thing that's going to decide your success or failure is the...
Bill Canady has over 30 years of experience leading global businesses. Bill has developed a profitable growth operating system and is the author of The 80/20 CEO. Bill is the CEO of OTC Industrial Technologies. He directs an organization with 30 operating companies, $1 billion in annual sales, 2,000 plus employees, and over 70 sites.
What percentage of the C-suite team makes it through that third phase?
I would say through the whole process, typically less than an excellent plan that nobody follows is useless. An okay plan that everyone buys into, you can conquer the world. And your job as the leader when you come in is to figure out who's on board and who's not.
Hey, Bill, it's great to have you here. You know, we just had the introduction that we traditionally do here, which is like kind of more of that formal theatrical introduction here. But your book is, it's a great book. You know what? I'll tell you one of the reasons I like it. It's because you can always tell the difference between a theoretical author and a practical author who can provide theory, but, is drawing upon real experience. But before we get into the 80/20 CEO, why don't you tell people a little bit more? I guess I'd like you to do it two different ways. Let's talk a little bit more about yourself. We're just sharing some common history that we had as geographically speaking. And what brought you to write the book and why you're uniquely qualified for it, in particular that subtitle, Take Command of Your Business in 100 Days.
No, great. Well, first of all, Dave, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. You know, the book has really been kind of a life's journey. When I look back over the years, typically what I wind up doing is middle market companies. I'll come in at whatever size they are. And as an example, they're around $500 million. I can generally get them to $1 billion or $2 billion in 3 to 5 years. And as the time has gone through the years, one of the things I've gotten more and more around is a company that's in a little bit tough shape, right? And when they bring in a new CEO, it's generally not because they love the former one. It's something's gone wrong and they need someone to come in. And the key to that is you got to be able to come in pretty quick and get your hands around it. And you don't do the same thing every time, but you need a process. And it's kind of like being a master carpenter. We all use hammers and saws and nails, but it's what you do with that hammer and saw and nail that makes a difference. And that's the key. That's the blueprint. It's like, here's what we're building. Here's where we're going. And the book for me was laying that out. Through the years, one of the questions I got time to get like, all right, what are we doing next? Where are we in this journey? And I kind of went back and it was during the pandemic, and I was like, I wouldn't mind doing this. And I kept thinking, what is it going to be about? And when I looked at my hard drive, my computer, it was all already there. It was 20 years worth of coming in, taking a company that was going through whatever it was going through and really helping it go to that next level. And it was to create a roadmap, not just of the process, but what you feel as you're going, what you see and react. And you said something really important. There's a lot of theory in it, and you need theory for sure. But it's that practical application of, as Mike Tyson said, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? So the first day, prepare yourself. Someone's going to punch you right in the mouth. It's great to know what comes next.
Yeah, that's great. And we rep that out all the time. And what do you think of, is Tyson still in that? It's on hold.
In that fight?
It's on hold now, I think. I'm not sure what's going to happen there. Anyway, totally.
Yeah, it's some medical scare. Yeah. Probably gave him a couple of nickels to not beat him to death. That's right. Yeah. I mean, Tyson's in his 50s. He looks like he's a machine.
He is a machine. He's 58 years old, and he's still ready to go. It's pretty awesome. Okay, so I do like this. You know what you talked about. Some people have, a lot of authors. They say, "Well, how long did it take you to write your book?" And you already answered that in two different ways. You're like, it took no time at all, but it took 20 years, and because there it's all right there. So you now have an effective book. You have a roadmap. You have people that are probably using this. They're taking advantage of this 100-day turnaround idea. Of course, you don't turn the business around in 100 days, but you put it on path in 100 days, what you're talking about. So I want to get into this a little bit, if you don't mind, in it, because I found it, very interesting too, is that the book really, clearly you're going to come up with things, and you're in private equity right now, where you could, talk all day long about a balance sheet and, technical sides of that. You've been in companies where you had to deal with certain distribution ideas and channels and everything else. But the book really is about connecting to the other people in the organization that are important and getting the right people in the right seats attitudinally. Talk a little bit about the mental game that is required for you and required for the people that you're leading, and when you can win somebody over, and when it's time to just move on from them.
Yeah, so interesting. That is the whole crux of the thing. It's so interesting you got there right away. So many people will reach out and they'll spend so much time like talking about the dad, and the dad is absolutely critically important. But really, the thing that's going to decide your success or failure is the team. And your job as the leader when you come in is to figure out who's on board and who's not. And this 100-day plan is really nothing but a job interview for the team. It's really nothing more than a job interview with the team. So what happens? So you get a call and you say, hey, Dave, we need some help. And you agree. And they'll send you whatever they have. Sometimes strategic plans, the balance sheet, the P&L, whatever it is they have. It really, it matters, but only like the thing you have to figure out is, do I have enough cash to keep this thing going?
Yeah.
Right. You're kind of wondering about that. You'll talk sometimes to the former CEO or certainly the board, and they'll say, this is how we feel about this person or this situation, all that. But ultimately, I find that most of the feedback they get there is just a group of opinions. You really got to go see it yourself, right? The facts are the facts and numbers are the numbers, but it's how people are going to execute on it. So the most critical thing, and I was just talking to a fellow CEO that I work with, this lady. She's very gifted in it, and she's going through her own transition with her company right now. And she'd got the book, and she was like, well, how do you handle this? And once she actually read it, she goes, I get it. I'm starting to see what you're talking about. The key is you come in, you have your numbers, you sit down on the first day, and depending on where that company's in its journey, and I'll give you two extremes. One is it is a burning platform. It is on the verge of going out of business or close to it. The other one is it is a well-run company. Even if they're not as well run as they think as they could be, they believe they're very well run. And it is far easier when you're coming in to have a burning platform as a new leader because people recognize the company is at risk, their jobs are at risk, and they want to win, right? They want to keep going. If they love the company, if they love who they're with, if they want to be part of it. So that's the preferable one as a new leader to come in is a situation that is in dire need and you can come help. So you recognize it. There's enough cash to maybe turn it around. You have a very short window of time.
Hey, Bill, just I want to let you do all the speaking here, but there's a point that some people might be missing. Why is that easier? Clearly you're saying these people want to win, but I guess that might be why it's easier on that side. But why is it hard to work with people who already have a decent thing going and think it's growing? Why is that harder?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've done that a couple of times where the companies are
out. You don't have to spend
and,
too much time on it, but it's just.
Yeah, no. The reason is they think it's right. What they're doing is right. And you're coming in as a caretaker. They want to do more of what they're doing. They're not looking for suggestions. If you think I'm wrong, just think about your kids. Try telling your kids what to do, right? They immediately tell you why you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So people who have what they believe is a winning formula are not looking for help.
Yeah, so humility would be the factor that is missing there. Most people would rather be right to their own demise than wrong to their own prosperity. And so they're probably not open like the other teams are. Okay, so continue. So here you are, you're in a distressed company. You've gone through this a lot. You're speaking from experience. What do you do first?
First thing you want to do is get a goal. As the CEO, that is your job to do. It's yours and the board. The board would typically give you some type of direction. Hey, we want to sell this business. We got to get it to a certain amount. We got debt to pay off, whatever it is. There's generally some mathematical goal. It's better if it's mathematical because you can work your way to it. The problem with a quantitative goal is it's not inspiring. A few people get inspired by saying, go get 100, right? But what that does for you and your leadership team is bound how big the plans have to be for it to be successful. Right? And that's critical.
Yeah. And so you're talking about inspiring. You're not just putting a number out there with the expectation that just because the owners are inspired to have this number take place because it takes all sorts of financial pressures off, that everybody else is going to integrate into that. So how do you do that? How do you connect that big overarching goal with the goal of the individual players?
So it depends on what kind of company you're in. If you're in a public company, it's whatever the shareholders have agreed to, whatever you told the street, you're going to fight for every penny on that share. You've got almost an infinity horizon with a 90-day window to hit it in. If you're in a private company, it's whatever the goals or the values of the owner is. And that value may be to take care of folks. It may be to give back to society. It may be they just want a bigger boat and a better dividend. It's whatever they value. Mm-hmm. The third type is private equity, which is the easiest one. Private equity is really about we want to get a return on the money we put in. Whether you like that or not isn't really important. What it is a leader and a leadership team is it clarifies what you're doing. And everyone in that room typically has skin in that game. So if you're walking in a situation and that agreement is already there, it gets there before you show up. And let's just make up a number. So your goal, you're at 50, you're at 50% of wherever you need to be. You need to get to 100% of wherever you need to be. Everyone in that room is tied to it. What the most amazing thing is they don't always understand what that means. So walking in with the goal in hand, you and your CFO, and talking about it with your team is a very enlightening experience because they need to have confidence that the goal is achievable. So that's really step one. Identify the goal, make sure everyone understands it.
And so what do you do with the naysayers? How far can a person push back with you before it goes from being valuable? Because it is, generally speaking, when people have a contrary view and you can package that the right way, it's insightful. How far does that go before you just realize this person's just not on board?
Yeah. And that goes back to your original question. What do you do if you can't get them on board? Right. Mm-hmm. So as you're doing this, as the leader, your job was to pick that goal or enunciate the goal and make sure that it's equivalent to whatever the investors or owners want. As you're going over this 100 days, you're looking for the people who can't get past the naysaying. Okay. Right. It's not important whether they like it or they don't like it. Can they understand it? Can they buy it? Do they believe it? Do they want to be part of it? And over these 4 steps, the first one is get a goal. The second one, and this is where people start revealing themselves, is the strategy that it takes to achieve the goal. And this is really important. So you come in, you say, we're going to go to 100. Everybody agrees. You'll have some back and forth on it. But surprisingly, that generally is not the issue, right? Particularly in private equity, because this is how they're going to get paid. Everyone gets paid the same way in it. The second piece is what is the strategy that it will take to get there? So use a military example. You're the general. You're the field general. You said it. Those are the captains, the folks out there, the staff who has to go execute that plan. They're going to bring back in that strategy. So over the next 30 to 45 days, when you walk out of that room over the next 30 to 45 days, they're going to come back and tell you, this is the strategy for my group that it's going to take to achieve that goal. Remember, in that room, everybody in the company reports to somebody in that room. This is the senior staff, the executive leadership team. There'll be the CEO, the CFO, CO, all the C people, right? Everybody running the business. The entire company reports to this room, right? And typically it'll be, depending on the size of the company, from just a handful, 4 or 5, to maybe 15 or 20 people, but it's the senior leadership. They've got to come back with that strategy. That's the next step.
What's fascinating about that, you really think about it. Okay, what is the difference now? Unless there was a massive influx of cash that allows this thing to stay alive for a longer period of time. If that's not the case, there's one difference. And that's a guy like Bill Canady in the room asking that team to put together a better plan and coming in with it. I mean, if you just think about the void that was there prior to that, it's that the leader didn't either recognize the challenges, was afraid of the challenges, wasn't engaged, or literally did not recognize that his or her team could come up with better answers because he never asked them to do so. I mean, it's a pretty simplistic way of looking at it, but I've seen it many times over that if you have an expectation for people to come up with a better idea, they're going to do it. In other words, something you have not yet said, because I believe that it's not true, is that you had to go in with all the answers.
It's critical you don't. You may think you know the answers. You should not share those answers, because the moment you give the answer, particularly as a CEO, they're going to agree with you. And in the moment that plan does not work, because remember Mike Tyson, right? Everyone's got a plan till you get hit in the mouth. you're now going to have to change things. You're going to have to take different steps. You are going to pivot. You're going to zig. You're going to zag. If it's your plan, they're going to tell you why you are failing. It has to be their plan. They have to own it. And if you're owning it, forget about it. When I have found in CEO cases, the reason that the person before, the reason they failed was they were trying to get their plan through and nobody bought into it. They said all the right things. Yes, this is great, boss. This is a most amazing. But you know what? They'd go home and tell their spouse, that guy's crazy. We can't get to 100 million. There's no way. This plan will never work.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So how often is it that you are saying in your own mind, gosh, I know the plan should be this. I'm not going to say that because I want it to be their idea. They come up with a plan. It's different than the one you would have done. But you're like, it's better for them to go after this plan their way with conviction.
Yes.
Than a plan that might be even slightly better that they're not going to buy into. Is this a part of the formula? Knowing that prudential step?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. An excellent plan that nobody follows is useless. An okay plan that everyone buys into, you can conquer the world with, right? So they come back and you're working every day. So you're not in vacuums. You're talking about it. You're going on, but you set a date. You have to set a date. You say, we're going to be back here 30 to 45 days later, and you're going to tell me your plan. And what you're looking for is reasonableness, right? You don't want to see in the middle, like hope is not a strategy. All that stuff is true. You're not looking, and then magic happens and smoke goes, nope. We're logically going to get to it, right? And there's time that's involved in it. And you're looking for things that, do the old Einstein quote. I don't even know if it's true or not, but it's certainly been given to him, was you're wanting something different, but you're doing the same thing. You're looking for, they're going to make a change. And where they reveal themselves at, where if they're on board or not, is in step 3, which is when now they've got the plan, they say, this is how they're going to organize themselves. So it's the reorganization in some cases of the company. You can't keep doing what you were doing. You now must organize yourself because you only have so many people, so many hours, so you can't do it all, right? And this is where the most interesting stuff's are. And this is where sometimes you lose some of your team. Because I don't know why, I've often thought about it, why people can't make this leap. And I've decided, my theory is based on shame, right? Most of the people who are in that room to begin with are legacy people. They were here before you got here. They're also experts. They've been in this industry. There's a highly likelihood you have limited knowledge, certainly compared to them. And now you're going to come in, and it's true it's not working. They know that. They've seen the numbers. They've agreed that this size we can go do it, but they've got to do something different. They will spend an extraordinary amount of time justifying why we're in this bad situation, right? They'll go, you don't understand. Like I had to do this, or this was a situation. And I understand that. I totally agree, but it doesn't matter. What matters is we have to change. We know that because we've looked at the numbers. We're going to go out of business if we don't make this, or we're not going to get the return, or it doesn't have to be drastic, but there's some reason that we're doing this. You're looking for them to change. Now, I believe everyone, given enough time, can absolutely go through the change. The problem is we don't have that time. We're looking to get this thing turned around in 3 to 5 years. 3 is better than 5, right? Because it's about money. It takes you a year to 18 months to get through your initial turn. I talk about getting command and control in 100 days, but you haven't solved the issues. You just got everyone focused around the central pieces. If you're going to sell it in 3 years, you can't spend 2 years trying to get people on board. And people have this, I believe it's shame. They don't want to admit why, or it was someone else's fault. So they just can't let it go. Someone new who has the skill set can come right in, and they don't have to justify anything. They'll make any change. They feel no ownership for it. And I think that's what drives the majority of change. Typically, you'll see that start happening just before the 3rd meeting. And then you as the leader have to decide how long you're going to let it go.
This interview would be way more fun if I could disagree with Bill, went to Nico. I literally am like, yep. Oh yeah, that's for sure. I haven't used the term shame for that, but it definitely is an apropos word. And any other word that I've used in that setting is pretty much the same thing. Self-justification, we talk about all the time. It's the second most powerful motivator for human beings. Self-justification is. And so when you have it, you're spending all sorts of reasons. You're basically trying to convince people to stay in the past. no matter where that is, as opposed to just freeing yourself from it moving forward, which is a fantastic reality. Let me ask you this, just historically speaking, having done this a number of times, what percentage of the C-suite team makes it through that third phase?
I would say through the whole process, typically less than 25%.
Less than 25% make it. So you're doing a lot of replacement.
Yeah, almost always. And not because they're not worthy people, they're not great people. They just can't make the pivot fast enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll give you two examples. I came in with one company August 9th. I told the entire organization we were going to launch our new company, not our new company, but a new strategy, December 16th, right? At the end of December 16th, so I had 14 people reporting to me. At the end of that time, 4 were still there. A year later, 2 were there.
Yeah, I had that experience with a Canadian company that I took over one time. And
They're not bad people.
No, of 14 leaders, there were 3 left, and we rebuilt and we grew really nicely. But that process was pretty painful because at that time for me, I was quite young. It was the first time I ever did it. So
hey, you're still young. I'm going to go with it.
Yeah, I'm 55. So I qualify for an AARP card, and I have 7 grandkids. So
wow.
I'll take it. Yeah. But anyway, so I was a young man when I did that, and I had some similar experiences, but nothing quite like that. And every time that it was happening, I felt at first like, okay, well, I can't compromise this standard, and they're not buying in. And frankly, what happened was, and this is why I had a hard time with it when I was younger, as opposed to now just naturally accepting this as the process, like probably 10 out of 12 of them chose to depart on their own.
They leave.
Yeah, they were like, I'm not going to be a part of this anymore. And I had a complex at first. And of course, now throughout the years, as I've seen this sort of thing develop and do it more frequently, I've started to recognize that natural attrition that takes place when a new leader enters into a position is completely healthy. It's a very healthy thing. So
yeah, I encourage it. What I tell people is things like, if you stick through this, you're going to learn more than you've ever learned in your life. You get more opportunity you have. But this is not going to be easy. But all this time, you've been saying, man, if I just had the chance, I could really show them what to go do. Well, guess what? This is going to be your plan. You're going to get to lay it out. You're going to put your team together and all that. Now, I'm going to opine. I'm going to talk about it. You and I are going to agree. But at the end of the day, you're going to decide on it because you have to own it. I'll tell you what the goal is. You have to show me you can get there with it. And if you go against everything I'm saying, that's fine. But make sure you're right.
Yeah. Make sure you're right. I would tell people, hey, you have a right to be a good whatever, or you have a right to be. This is within reason. You have a right to be the CFO or the right to be the national sales manager, but you don't have the right to be a bad one.
Can't be a bad one.
Yeah. So like, you person has a right to say, I want to become a pilot or not be a pilot, but they have no right to be a bad pilot. And it's that same sort of circumstance. And when you take over an organization, you see people that are willing to like humble themselves and get there. But it really does take an enormous amount of humility from the leaders too, to be able to recognize, that maybe you have a jaded idea because this person reminds you of somebody else you worked with. And if you just give them enough time, you realize that they actually kind of rise above it later on. I'm sure you've probably experienced that before because it seems like
all the time.
Yeah.
The thing that I do is I make sure that we start building a culture right away, and we do it through language. So I talk about the 4 commandments, right? And I tell them you can run every group you've got off the 4 commandments, right? No matter what your situation, if you'll answer one of these questions, you'll know exactly where your challenge is at. So these are in no order. The first one is to be data driven. So we use data to do everything. The 80-20 process is nothing more than looking at data. Data doesn't lie, right? It's not good or bad. And we say things like, if you have less than 20% of the data, you're probably guessing. If you have more than 80%, you're probably so late in the process, everyone else has passed you by, right? So you're going to need to use your experience, but go get the data. We'll get better as we go. The second one is be on pace. If you're too fast, you leave everyone behind. You're doing it by yourself. Doesn't work. If you're too slow, you're the bottleneck. You got to be on the right pace for what the company needs, the team needs, and you've got to get them there, right? So third one is no surprises, right? Bad news, relatives, and fish all stink after 3 days. So let's get out in front of it, and let's make sure we know what's going on. Your piece as the leader is you can't punish them for telling you, right? Make sure, like you said before, that person might remind you of that kid that picked on you in school or something. It doesn't matter, right? You want a good leader. And the final one is the most important, and that is results matter. We will not be a best efforts company. Batting 300 may get you in the Hall of Fame at baseball. Here, it gets you fired, right? We have to for sure score points or whatever euphemism you like, because we've got all these employees, we got all these families, everyone's depending. They pay light bills, their colleges, our investors are looking for us, our banks, that we got to pay our debt back. We have to make sure that we win more than we lose. And so when, there's a razor around when you're given a job to do, it's your job to figure out how to do it correctly, right? It's not the person who gave it to you. You're the CFO. I'm not going to tell you how to be a CFO. You need to figure out how to be a CFO, but I will hold you accountable, as you said, being a good CFO, being a good pilot, whatever it is. So those 4 things, when someone comes in and they say to me, okay, this doesn't work. And then I would say, all right, which one of these are we not doing? Right. And if we're doing them all, okay, that's fine. It's okay that it didn't work, because we're a progress, not perfection company. You can't fall out of a basement, right? It's like, just go try, folks. It makes a big difference if you'll give them the room to test their theories and then change it when it's not working.
So when do you know that you did this right and that all the planning and the preparation put you on the right path? I mean, I know there's always going to be iterative decision making and whatnot, but when do you know that is there a time where you say, you know what, the team has been replaced, we know who's on board, everything makes sense, and we actually have a little bit of a track record to show that we're getting somewhere? Or is there, where is that for you, that you feel like, okay, all of the massive change doesn't have to happen, we just have to get better in what we're doing?
Yeah, so there's the three stages of it. So the first is we come in, we call it the earn the right to grow. So we do the 100-day plan. We do 3 things on that, right? So we kick off that 100 days we were just talking about, getting the goal, the strategy, the reorganization, then the actions to go do it. It's the final one. The second thing we do is we start pulling data right away. And that's typically the finance team is, in some operations, are pulling the data. That's generally not that difficult to do. And the third stage that we're looking at is any immediacy things. It's if your house is on fire, you put it out. If you got a hole in your boat, you patch the hole. So we'll look at things we can do really quickly around pricing and saving costs, because there's no pot of money. I have to self-generate it all. And so I can't go back to the people, the investors, and say, hey, we spent all that money you gave us. Could you give us more? We have to figure out what's not working, take the resources from that and put it on the things that are, and they're both are going on. So I kick that off right away. In 6 months, I will know if the team is bought in or not. Like typically, I generally know before that, but in 6 months, it's kind of settled itself out. There may be some fallout later, but that's generally not a surprise. It's just a timing piece of it. The second thing we do after 6 months, between 6 and 8, we'll do what's called a zero-based budgeting, right? And what we're doing there is looking, we now have our data. We know where good is, where money's available. We're looking at the resources we have and taking those resources and putting them over there. So things that we're not making money on, customers we're not, products, we'll exit those. We'll take those salespeople, just as a simple example, and put those on the better customers, right? So instead of you being a salesman with 1,000 customers, maybe now you're a salesman with 10 customers, but they represent vast more opportunity, things like that. So in that, we do that right around the 6 to 8 piece. From there will know now I know my team's on board. I also know both my cost savings, and I know where I'm getting my resources for to invest in the company. So I've got my initiatives lined out. I know where my resources are coming from. My team is feeling pretty good. The next 6 months after that, because not everything we do works, we start doing little mini course corrections. So we just kind of get narrower and narrower. Like that didn't work, that did. We went too far here, not far enough there. At the end of the year, I know we have it. I know we have it at the end of the year. Feels good. At 18 months, right? By that point, we've took a whole lap around the track. And then we're just trying to say, all right, how do we go faster? That's where we start looking at things around polishing, getting it ready, really we call it doubling down. We double down on what's working. We exit what's not. And in the final one, in the third year, is where we hit the flywheel effect. It should be working enough that now momentum is getting momentum. And we've shifted all our resources to around, we call them the 80s. They produce 80%. It's generally the 20% of the company that produces 80%. We've got it aligned there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so, when you're doing this sort of thing and you personally are doing it just kind of as the go in, fix this up, turn around and sell it, there's going to be a leadership vacuum if you're not planning for that. What are the things that you do, and how quickly do you start planning for somebody to take the role that you're in? And what are the complexities around that?
We start right away, and we'll identify immediately who we think could be my replacement, the CFO's replacement. Those are typically the two most important ones at the beginning. It spreads itself out as we go. But in both the companies I'm CEO today, I have replacements. They're identified. We're working on that. They may or may not know they're identified. They know that they're getting extra stuff. But typically, I want to have, if I'm hit by a bus, I want them to be ready to go from the time I hit the door. Within 3 years, they should be ready to go. Like, in other words, they have been involved so much in it. That was the first piece, was getting the company solidified. They need to learn the process, because the last thing you want to do, if it is working, to go in a different direction, right? But you want them to learn the process. In the second year, you start giving them more. And in the third year, you can step out, or like you can go to executive chair, or whatever the case may be, whatever works for you.
Yeah. And I mean, have you found that that's a difficult thing to do, or you've identified these people pretty early on? Are you, taking blood samples and running them through every test that you possibly can to find out if they're a good candidate before you get started? What is your process there?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, I've been rather fortunate with it. I look back, there's greater than 20 people out there today who are sitting presidents or CEOs or chairmen who work for me in their career, and I was able to help them get to that next spot. So typically what happens is, because this isn't fly by wire, it's a very hands-on process. You're deeply involved. And because I'm not the key to this thing. It's the team's the key, because they own the strategy. So you're really seeing who's rising and who's not. The thing you have to be careful of is you don't want to think just because that person's segment, group, whatever you call it, is performing the best means they're the best. Sometimes it's just the business is doing the best, right? And sometimes the business doing the worst isn't because the person is broken. It's because that segment is. And that happens all the time. So what you're really looking for are people who believe in the process, treat people with dignity and respect. They live the values, and the values in every company I go in are always the same. It's never, let's treat people bad and steal from them. It's always, work-life balance. Let's treat people with dignity and respect. Let's invest in the business. Let's be experts. You're looking for people who can breathe that in, and then they're willing to go above and beyond, right? You're looking for somebody who will figure it out and has a winning streak. It's, you can say all you want to about Brady, but the guy knew how to win, right? And no matter where he was, up there, here, maybe he had great lines, I don't know, but he could put the teams together. That's what you're looking for. Someone that knows how to win and can inspire that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's terrific. When you think about your own career, have there been times where it looked like it wasn't going to come together? And
yeah, absolutely. I talk
give us
about
an
this
example.
all the time. And, and every time, no matter how many times I do this, I find myself in the car or whatever, I'm on the way, and we're going to make some big announcement, right? That we're moving something, changing something. It's going to make some people very happy and some people upset. And I'll have that moment of like, holy cow, what the hell if this is wrong? And I've got it wrong before, right? I absolutely have got it wrong. Every time I've gotten it wrong was because I didn't really go see for myself, right? We had this one business. I won't mention the name of it because it's still an ongoing business, and I would tell you I got it wrong. But it was a business that was in coal, and you know how great coal is these days. So it was a little bit better then, but not much. And we had two major locations. We were all over the world. We had two major locations. One of them was in St. Louis, and the other one was in Ohio. And the guy who was the president was a terrific guy and everything. And I said, okay, what do you want to do? And he goes, we're going to shut down the Ohio one, and we're going to keep the St. Louis one. And I was like, all right, makes sense to me. And, the math all worked out and everything. But if I had went, I did not go. It was early in the process. So I'm just making excuses why I didn't go. But the reality was I did not go to the Ohio location and look at it, spend any time. I spent all my time over at the St. Louis one because that's where he was located and he was president of the group. And so when we shut it down, it just about killed us because really all our suppliers, everything was coming out of that Ohio piece. And I didn't realize, I did not go deep enough. I didn't ask the right enough questions. And it took us a couple years after shutting it down to recover from that. It made the business worse. It made everything worse. We got through it, but it was a poor decision. It was on my fault. So the way that I avoid that, getting to the heart of your question, is, you got to be engaged, right? You got to read everything. You got to show up at the meetings. You got to ask good questions. But most important, you just got to go see. You just need to go see. And once you see it, you'll know it. You can walk through factories all over. You can see people when they're happy, when they're not. They look at you. You can see the flow through it. You can see, are they using visual metrics, like on and on and on. You will know.
It's fascinating because you have not spoken of too many things that put the onus or burden on you to be the expert in anything other than one thing, and it's actually the biggest thing, and that is the expert in leadership. I had somebody asked me the other day. They said, "Who's more important, the frontline worker or the CEO?" And there was another lead executive that answered the question. And he said, let me give that some thought. And he came back and he said, well, the frontline worker, because the frontline worker interfaces with the client or the customer. So the end result is that experience. And this is a good guy, by the way, smart answer, thoughtful. But I said entirely no. And this is from when I was working at Hardee's on the grill, all the way to founding companies of my own as a CEO. It is absolutely the CEO. The reason
100%.
It is absolutely, that is not an arrogant thing to say. It is sometimes, not for this other gentleman that I was with, because he's very thoughtful that way. He's sincere and humble. But for a lot of people, it's a virtue signal to say it's the frontline worker, because the frontline worker is unemployed. Straight up, if the CEO doesn't have it together. You're talking about going in and using a high level of emotional intelligence, a high level of empathy, relating to the people you're working with, but being steely hardcore in your commitment to getting things done. In other words, like, hey, you know what? I love you. I want to work with you. This is a great thing. Let's have a great mission together. I believe in you. I'm going to delegate to you to come up with the answers to the problems, all that kind of stuff. And by the way, if you don't, we got to move on because it has to be done. I mean, it's like that's the real secret sauce there. What formed you? There's a character formation. There's a reduction of vice and an increase of virtue that is developed over a lifetime to get there. How did you get formed that way?
It's an interesting question. I think the things that make us our weakest make us our strongest, and vice versa. And so one of the things that has really benefited me is I have worked for a lot of different companies at this point, right? So I've seen both good and bad. And the reason I'm in this role is somebody took a chance on me. And so the very first job I got as a leader, I was running the company. I go in and I do a really good job. I mean, we kill it. So what do you do? What do you get when you do a really good job? You get more work, right? So I got another one. I went in and did the exact same thing and almost killed that company, right? Because while the tools were always the same, if you will, I was building a different house, right? Maybe I'm not building an apartment. Maybe I'm building a condo, or maybe I'm building a beach house or whatever. And I just tried to do the same thing. So guess what I learned? You really got to stop and figure out exactly what you're trying to accomplish. What's wrong with this business? What's right with this business? Where is the team at and all that? So each one of the things that I've done, the reason I've got where I am today is because, in making, I hope are good decisions, because I made a lot of bad decisions in the past. Right. And that was one of the things that really drove the book was if, as you go through and read it, it talks about, we started out with here and it was kind of working, then it wasn't, and we changed and all that. So what I've learned is there's not enough hours in the day for me to be an expert. I remember early on, I had a boss and he said, it was very profound to me. I don't ask anyone to do anything I haven't already done. I'm telling you, that is the prescription to burnout. And you can't do it. I have 10,000 employees, 50 different countries. Good luck asking me to do half the stuff, right? But I have a certain skill set that I'm probably far better at being a CEO than I am just about any other thing, because I know what good looks like. I have a process that takes the emotion out of it. And it says the data tells us this. And this is where you've got to get that team to buy in. And the team has to own it. Now, that's a hard thing to do. It is hard, even because it's like with your kids. Did you say 7 grandkids?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
6 kids, 7 grandkids.
How many times when they were growing up, you're like, you want to go, and they don't listen, right? You give them a little advice, you set the parameters, and then you say, okay, show me what you're going to go do. Now, the difference is, and this didn't happen until maybe just a few years ago, was I used to give more and more time for people to go find themselves. I have found for that individual, that's a great outcome. For the whole company, it's a terrible outcome, right? Because if that person is destroying value, is a cancer to the culture, if when they come in that room, they say what you want to hear and they go outside and they say, this is terrible, this is absolutely horrible, and then they tell everyone that, this cancer begins, particularly if they're a well-respected person. And so I've learned, here's what I do. I come in and I say, Dave, we got to go win. What's your plan? And then they'll tell me, and I'll come back and I'll say, okay, this isn't working. Data shows this, right? And I'll do that a couple of times. And then I'll say to them, particularly if they're fighting, I go, maybe this job just isn't for you. Maybe it's just not for you. It's not that you're a bad person. You're a great person. But what we're doing is creating a new skill set, and you have to be willing to change. It shows itself early. That's why we run it so quickly at the beginning, is because I can't take 2 years if my exit strategy to get this business back on. I'm digressing a little bit. The last company I took over, they had not hit a bonus in 3 years. No one had raises. That's because of bad decision making. There's no cash available. We have paid raises every time. And when I'm on the calls, they say, what's the raise going to be? And I always say the same thing. You're going to be deeply disappointed in what we can pay you. However, you are going to get a raise, and that's going to be better than what you got before, right? We're going to get you the bonus. So it's that kind of thing. You got to be candid. You got to be honest, and you got to be willing to let people go. Let them go be somewhere else where they can be happy.
Yeah. And it's an interesting thing too, because a lot of those people who they have that passive aggressiveness about them. They glad hand in the meeting and they make everything look good, but then they privately go and they just start to destroy it. I've noticed in my career that I'll be in a room with that person and I can just see it. I know, I'm like, that person's got to go.
Isn't it?
Yeah. And you tell other executives and they're like, oh, no, they're on board. And I'm like, no, I'm telling you, they've got to go. And then sometimes what I'll do is I'll say, listen, they're on your team, so it's going to be your decision, but I'm going to tell you to watch them right now and pay close attention. And then sometimes they'll come around and see it. Other times you get to the point where you're like, all right, you're not seeing it. We're going to remove them. You move them. And it is absolutely amazing how quickly it changes. It changes almost overnight. Attitudes turn around. Yeah.
Every time I have turned a company around and got it on the path in 2 years or less, well, it's always, but it's 100% because the team believed in it. It was not me, right? It was, I set the goal. I said, this is the mountain we're going to go take. We got buy-in. I didn't just say it was. I mean, we put the data up and said, this is what we've got to go do. This is what it looks like. Everyone gets on board. They may not like the goal, right? But we're not here for them to be liking it or not. This is the goal. This is what it has to be, right? Then the strategy is there. So I know so quickly if they're buying in or not, just by the fact they're executing on the strategy or putting it together. Like a lot of little red flags I'll see is, I'm working with the person. They come in and they tell me their strategy. I say, all right, did you do all this? Because I'm expecting, because remember, everyone in the company reports to this one room, the entire company. I go, who did you work with? Tell me your team and all that, because the last thing I want is them to come in and, go home, work on it, bring it back and give me a perfect plan. I need a plan that this whole team's going to buy in. So I look to, do they have fellowship? Do they have buy-in? How are they talking about their people? Do they do all the talking in the meeting? Do they bring the people to the meeting, right? I need to see out of them the same thing I want to see out of myself is, can they get people to buy in? You got 10,000 employees. It's the leadership's going to make the difference, but someone's got to go execute it. And I think that's really what your friend's talking about is, yeah, the person out there putting the nut on the rim, they're critical. You could not do it without it. But they're focused on that one thing. The people who can see it and get it across and grate that across everyone, you get that wrong, the company goes away.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like that you both need each other. And it's an interesting thing, you know, like some people look at this as, are you saying, well, who's a more valuable human being? Neither. That's not what I'm saying. Everybody's an equal valuable human being. But if you want to know which one is going to determine the success or the failure of the company, it's going to be the person who's at the top, because everybody else is relying on that person to make great decisions for them. And that's super important. I've paid attention to this. You probably even use this wording, although it's remarkable how much of this wording is similar to the things that we're doing here. But whenever people use they language, I know they're probably not in. I wonder when they are going to do this. I wonder when the company is this. And if I'm hearing that, I'm a little bit red flaggish compared to when we are or us.
I say, if you're pointing a finger, there's at least 3 of them pointing back at you, right? So it's we. Mm-hmm. It's all about we. You know, I try not to get too didactic about it, but words matter, and how people talk and what you see about them and things like that. So, like, I had one guy. So I take over this company. The former CEO was a board member. It came in as interim. He and I sat down, and he's like, "Okay, let me tell you about everyone." So he gets this one guy. We'll call him Bob or Joe. It doesn't really matter. And he goes, "This guy's the best guy in the company," right? And I go, "Really?" And he tells me why. And he was right. The guy was a genius. He really was. The problem is he couldn't get out of his head. So I go out there, and every time I'm talking, he's always so tense. And so what I do while all they're building the plans, I travel. I go location to location to location. I do the same thing every time. I go in, I say hi to everyone, I shake their hands, ask them how they're doing. Then we hold a town hall meeting. Generally, that's about 30 to 60 minutes of me talking and 30 to 60 minutes of questions. So somewhere between an hour and 2 hours, 90 minutes is generally it. And then we break bread together. We'll bring in like Chick-fil-A, or we'll cook hamburgers, or at the end of the day, we'll play bags and have a beer or something, right? Just try to get to know each other and just do it out on the factory floor or the just keep it very simple with it. So I go out there and I tell them, I said, this is where we're at. I answer their questions. I tell them, like, you're going to be disappointed in our raises if we have any at all, on and on and on. It's kind of funny how it all goes. So I'm going around and doing that, and they keep telling me this guy, they hate this guy. I'm like, you hate this? I mean, people are just so emotional about him, right? And at the end of the day, he was the smartest guy for sure, and had some of the best plans, but he didn't bring anyone. His pace was wrong. He was so far ahead of everyone, right?
So nobody was inspired by him.
I fired him, absolutely. And he was so devastated by it. He couldn't believe it. And he was so angry about it. And I said, I think I'm doing you the greatest gift ever. You perhaps are the most unhappy person I've ever met. I see you treat people poorly. I see you blow up at them. When you're not in the room, they tell me all this stuff. I see you do it. I go, you're going to kill yourself with just like a heart attack. You cannot be this unhappy with it. He left, and it was very dramatic when he left. And the entire temperature of that whole group went down.
Yeah.
Right? It made like you said, it was almost overnight.
It is almost overnight. Have you ever noticed that those people sell themselves as incredibly valuable? And by the way, usually what it is so I've seen like a VP, a director, or president of a department claim that this one particular person in their organization is like the glue that holds it together. But yet there's something not working in the organization. And they have almost like a little cult of personality, almost like a mild little, hey, if I left, everyone would go with me type of thing about them.
I hear that all the time beginning on. Particularly the sales leaders. The sales leaders. These are my customers. These are I'm selling. Okay.
Whenever I hear that, that's the first person I want to let go, because I know that it's not true.
It's for sure.
Yeah, I know it's not true, but there's always like this threat around it that sounds like that. And it's like, once you've seen this, Bill, these patterns, because you're talking about patterns basically. When you're familiar with the patterns and you enter into the circumstance, you're like, you know what? I know who that guy is. I know who that woman is. I've worked with that person before. I've seen this particular setting here. We're going to probably mix this together there. And 9 out of 10 times, you're probably exactly right. But what makes you smart is knowing the difference between that one time and the other 9, where you have to pivot and just not rely on your intuition, knowing that as a fallible human being, you could actually be getting missed signals. And I see people mix that up. So Bill, you have been at it for quite some time. You, while you might still look like you're in your 20s, I'm guessing you're not. Yeah. What is next for you? How are you gonna keep? How long are you gonna
55, go? I'm 57. I only have one grandson though. So
all right.
For me, so I'm CEO of these two companies today. At some point, we'll figure that out, and then what I look forward to is someday moving more, doing more board work, that sort of thing. I think I got at least one more in me to go be a CEO again if the right opportunity is. But I love what I'm doing today. I'm blessed to be part of GenStar. I'm blessed to be part of Arrowhead and OTC. I just work with a lot of great people, and the fact I can do all this just tells you how little I actually do. It's everyone else around me. What my goal is, I just have to kind of keep it going, put the mile markers in, do the work, and allow people to really, really demonstrate what they can do. And it's funny, when you give people a chance, they'll surprise you on the upside every time. It's shocking how good people are and how much they want to win. So I just look forward to keep doing this and maybe keep writing a few more books. So, it's exciting times.
Well, I hope you do. I mean, the simplicity with which you speak about these things it's accessible to anyone. It does take quite a bit to form the character that you have. And that's really what this is about. Frankly speaking, it is about having a lot of high level of virtue, the prudence to make the right decisions, the way to understand justice in the workplace, which means there's certain mercy at certain times, but other times this has got to go. The fortitude to drive through the things you have, the temperance to resist maybe, saying that thing that you probably shouldn't say at the wrong time. So,
that's the hardest part, keeping my mouth shut.
It's hard for all of us, I got to tell you. But you're doing a great job with it. You're inspiring. I know a lot of people with the book. It is a very good book. I read a lot of these things. Nico, how often do I actually pick up a book and then say, I think we should have the author on it? In fact, I don't remember that. Well, Hal Elrod, Miracle Morning, but it wasn't even about this. It wasn't a business book like this, but fantastic work. We're going to have you on again. In fact, I could see Bill coming down to the Dave Cave and us doing a seminar together. No doubt about it. It'd be pretty cool to do.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
We're neighbors almost.
That'd be great. I mean, you're right. I forget, we're talking about manufacturing all the time. I'm like, okay, this is Midwest. I'm from Wisconsin. You're from Ohio. And I keep forgetting that we're like a couple hour drive apart. Nico's going to drive back past your house actually on his way up to Tampa today too. So we'll get together for sure at some point and be able to work on a project. That'd be great. Bill, any last words for the audience that you want to leave them with?
Yeah, I first just really want to thank you and Nico for having me on. This is fantastic. I love getting the word out about it. And, if there's anything I can do to help anyone, I've got a website. It's just my name, BillCanady.com. And you can shoot me an email or anything like that. But it's been a real pleasure. And I can't thank you enough for having me.
Absolutely. I do encourage you to go to BillCanady.com and seek his advice, and go ahead and buy the book too. You can get it all over the place. It's easy to buy a book nowadays. Go to Amazon, put a good review out there for Bill when you get a chance to read it. It's always good to get those. If you listen to Bill Canady, you can be a giant and we can go slay dragons together.